Why does an 18-year-old understand mitochondria, but not debt? Why can someone graduate with honors and still have no idea what inflation is? Why does the institution built to prepare you for adult life avoid the one thing that governs almost every adult decision you'll ever make? You spent over a decade in mandatory education, thousands of hours, and the single subject ruling your entire adult life barely showed up. Not because it's complicated. The reason it's missing is uncomfortable, and it's not the reason you've been told. By the end of this video, you'll see what school was actually built to do, and you won't be able to unsee it. Here's what you did learn. Bells, deadlines, rankings, permission, compliance, and numbers, always numbers, quietly telling you what you were worth. First it was gold stars, then test scores, then a GPA, then a class rank, then a starting salary, then a credit score, then a net worth, the one you measure against the people you went to school with. The same machine, the whole way up. And at no point did anyone stop to ask, who designed the numbers? Whoever it wasn't you. Hold on to that question. We're going to come back to it. Because you already know this, not intellectually, physically. That feeling when your boss messages you on a Sunday night. That drop in your chest when the bank app loads and the balance is lower than you thought. That guilt when you rest too long. That quiet shame of feeling behind at 25, at 30, at 35, without being sure what you're behind on or who set the pace. Those aren't character flaws. They're economic incentives, felt psychologically. The bell that told you when to move became a deadline. The grade book that ranked you became a credit score. Permission from the teacher became permission from the HR portal. The structure changed. The conditioning didn't. School and adult life were never two systems. They were always the same one. And is that not strange? If almost every adult carries this anxiety, you'd expect money to be the most thoroughly taught subject there is. Instead, it's the most thoroughly avoided. Which forces a question I want you sitting with for the next few minutes. If money shapes almost every adult life, why were we never taught how it actually works? Most people answer that question wrong. They say the system failed, that it's outdated, that nobody got around to it. To see why all of that is wrong, you have to stop asking about money and start asking about the building. This thing you grew up inside doesn't begin with education. It begins with a single problem: how to make large numbers of people move as one. For most of human history, children didn't go to school. They learned by doing, farming, building, healing, watching. Knowledge moved through families and apprenticeships. There was no need for synchronized populations until war made one. Sparta understood the principle first. The family competes with the state. A boy loyal to his mother in his village isn't automatically loyal to a hierarchy. So Sparta took boys from their families and raised them in the agoge. Endurance, obedience, the replacement of the self with the unit. The goal was never intelligence, it was reliability. But Sparta was a blunt instrument. The version you were raised inside is far more elegant and far more recent. And it has a birthplace: Prussia. By the late 1700s, Prussia had built something almost no one else had. One of the first compulsory state-run school systems on Earth. Then, in 1806, Napoleon shattered the Prussian army at Jena. And Prussia's leaders drew a conclusion that would quietly reshape your life 2 centuries later. The defeat wasn't only military. The problem was the population itself. Too independent, too hard to move as one. So, they rebuilt it. The aim? Citizens who were punctual, obedient, literate, and loyal to the state. People who would follow instructions in an army, a ministry, a factory. They standardized everything. Fixed age groups, a set curriculum, state-trained teachers, timed schedules, testing, attendance, authority flowing top-down. Bells to move the body, rows to hold it in place. Look at that list again. The fixed ages, the bells, the rows, the ranking. Every single thing you sat inside for 13 years was engineered on purpose by a defeated empire trying to build a more obedient population. It resembled a factory floor and a military unit, which is exactly what it was built to feed. And then someone wrote it down and carried it across an ocean. In 1843, an American crossed the Atlantic to see the Prussian system for himself. Horace Mann, the man history would call the father of American public schooling. He toured it. He was dazzled. He went home and championed the same architecture: compulsory attendance, a standardized curriculum, state-trained teachers, age-graded classrooms, government oversight. State by state, it spread across America. Then industrialization finished what war and reform had started. Factories needed workers who showed up on time, read instructions, and obeyed a clock. The schools were already producing them. And when that machine needed money to scale, it found it. In 1903, John D. Rockefeller established the General Education Board, a private fund that poured money into shaping American schooling. One of its earliest letters, attributed to Rockefeller's advisor, Frederick T. Gates, laid out the vision in words that still stop people cold. In our dream, the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hand. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or of science, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, statesmen, of whom we now have ample supply. Sit in that for a second. Perfect docility. Our molding hand. Now, in fairness, Gates was describing rural schools, not a master plan for every child in America. But read what he rules out. Not bad behavior, not ignorance, thinkers, scientists, artists, people who might ask their own questions. The goal was never to awaken minds. It was to sort them into roles useful to someone else's order. And here's where almost everyone telling this story gets it wrong. They think the system failed. It didn't. It pulled literacy from the few to the many. It took knowledge that had been locked inside families and elites and handed it to entire populations. It genuinely solved the problems of an industrial age. That's the uncomfortable part. The system worked. It did exactly what it was built to do, better than almost anything humans have ever built. And it never stopped working. It didn't expire. It didn't fall behind. It upgraded. The factory extracted muscle. The modern economy extracts something far more valuable. It extracts your attention. And attention isn't just another form of labor. It's the source of all the others. Ideas, creativity, expertise, innovation, it all begins as attention, pointed at something for long enough to matter. The industrial worker sold his body. The knowledge worker sells his mind. A factory can only use your hands. An office can use your hands, your mind, your creativity, your judgment, and your focus all at once. The value created is greater. The wages are higher. But the exchange underneath is identical. You are trading irreplaceable life for inflatable money. And this is the upgrade nobody warned you about. The old system trained you to work inside it. The new one trains you to feed it, to pour the one resource that is truly only yours, your own mind, into machines built to capture its value. The value still gets created. You're just not the one who keeps it. And notice what it monetizes: your imagination, your curiosity, your focus, your capacity to think for yourself. The exact faculties the room was built to suppress. That isn't a malfunction. That isn't irony. That's the machine doing precisely what it was designed to do, having found something far more profitable to do it with. So, now go back to the question I told you to hold. Why is the subject that governs your entire adult life missing from the curriculum? Picture what happens to a person who actually understands money. He stops seeing a paycheck as the finish line. He starts seeing it as the bottom rung. He stops asking, "How do I get a better job?" He starts asking, "How do I stop trading every hour of my life for money that loses value?" That's a dangerous question. Dangerous for a system built around workers, borrowers, consumers, and taxpayers. Because a person afraid of falling behind works harder and asks fewer questions about why the game is shaped the way it is. He's too busy trying not to lose it. The anxiety isn't a side effect of the system. It's load-bearing. So here, finally, is the answer. The subject isn't missing because of incompetence. It isn't an oversight. It isn't outdated. You don't hand someone the tools to see the system while you're still building them into it. The curriculum was designed around usefulness. Useful workers, useful citizens, useful consumers, useful borrowers. And useful people do not need to understand the whole machine. They only need to operate their part of it. The subject is missing on purpose. And that's the part almost nobody sees. A person born inside a system rarely experiences it as a system. He experiences it as reality. A child born into rows doesn't ask why the rows exist. He learns which row is his, when to stand, when to sit, when to speak, when to wait. And if he does it long enough, obedience stops feeling like obedience. It starts feeling like maturity. That's what a system does when it works perfectly. It stops needing to be enforced. It becomes the air. And most people don't question the air, they defend it. Because questioning it would mean questioning the shape of their whole life. I'm not going to pretend seeing this frees you from it. You'll still feel the Sunday night dread. The balance will still drop. The shame will still arrive. But the dread stops being evidence that something's wrong with you and starts being information about the system you're standing in. That's the only thing this video can actually hand you. Not an exit, a pair of eyes. And here's the last thing, the part that should bother you a little. The extraction isn't history. It isn't Prussia. It isn't a factory floor a century ago. It's happening right now. The most valuable thing you own is your attention. You just spent more than 12 minutes of it pointed at a screen. So before you scroll to the next one, ask the question they trained you never to ask. Who decided what you'd spend it on? And was it ever you?